ourselves, because many of us know each other, but some of us do not. So I'm Rabbi Vaisberg. My first name's Dave. Rabbi isn't my first name. So, yeah, absolutely. It would be a little, yeah, because otherwise my job would be a little predetermined.
Rabbi.
It would just be
I
sad.
don't think your mother named you Rabbi.
I'm Valerie.
Irv. Lenny.
Amy.
Carol. Wendy.
Leslie. Carol Sue. Elizabeth.
Fantastic. So this is the What's a Jew to Do class, where we focus mainly on the practical side. What do you do when you encounter such and such a situation? If you show up to somebody's house on Hanukkah, what might you expect? If somebody's mourning and you go to their home to offer condolences, what should you expect? Today's class is kind of an overview of the Jewish calendar, of the Hebrew calendar. What happens, how it works, what to expect. And we're also going to talk about your generic holiday observance without going into specifics. What might you expect if you go and visit a Jew who's practicing a holiday of some sorts? What are the guidelines? So the first question is, when you think Jewish calendar, or Hebrew calendar it might be, what comes to mind?
High Holy Days.
High Holy Days. Why High Holy Days?
Well, that's the most important of the whole year. So it's the beginning.
So, absolutely. Well, there are actually 4 New Years in the Jewish calendar, 4 different ones, as marked in the Torah, depending on how you're counting. And the High Holy Days, Rosh Hashanah. And what does Rosh Hashanah mean? Head of the year. Rosh is head, Shana is year. So Rosh Hashanah actually marks the birthday of the world in a sense. Whereas Pesach, which is another New Year, Passover, marks the start of our freedom, in a sense, of the Jews as free, independent people. Although that's another topic that we'll talk about when we talk about Passover. So high holidays, because it's the biggest of the it's actually a whole series of holidays that we'll get into that feels like it encapsulates the whole year, and often afterwards you're ready just to have a year of rest before you get to the next one. So you get a month rest, really, that we'll get into. Thank you. What else?
It's always different.
It's always different. Please elaborate.
Every holiday comes out according to the English calendar. It comes out different.
Yeah, the English calendar is actually the Gregorian calendar.
But ours keeps. I know it's the same in the Hebrew
same
calendar.
date, but it's not the same date. It doesn't make sense.
And they throw another extra month in there once in a while.
Either early or late.
Well, there are 12 months in the Hebrew calendar, which we'll get into, and rather than having every 4 years a leap day, as we have in February, we have a leap month. That occurs, I believe it's 11 in every 19 years that there's a leap month. The months are only 28 days. They run on a week cycle, so it takes some very talented people to calculate which one is which, and I'm not one of those talented people. I follow the website.
I'm just glad they come out with calendars every year so that we can take them home and put them on our fridge.
Thank you.
Just remind them about the week.
Amazing.
The sisterhood calendar.
No, this one's now correct. If this is the one that I sent you, yeah. So if anyone would like, yeah, that's the calendar. No, that is the updated calendar. Although there is another update. So I'll let you know at the end of class, and stay tuned on YouTube to all our viewers. It's very exciting. I checked today; there were 8 viewers. So I wonder if anyone from class did, or maybe Sergio did. You were one of our 8 viewers?
No, I specifically don't do that to not upset the view count.
I'm just going to view it 100 million times, so it goes viral on YouTube.
What are we looking at? The name of the store?
Yeah, if you look up To Be Continued Books on Facebook, there is a YouTube video. I'll post it on my link, but enough publicity. So, anyway, so the question is, what's a pirate's favorite month on the Hebrew calendar? Adar. But on a leap year, the second favorite month is Adar Bet. Bet is the Hebrew letter, the second letter, which counts for 2. But the real pirate's favorite month, ER. We have and actually most of the names of months don't come from the Torah. The Torah just says the first month, the 5th month. Most of the Hebrew names of months are Babylonian. And the Babylonians are where our calendar comes from. So, what else do we think of with Jewish calendar? We think of not making much sense. And this year, high holidays are going to be very early. Rosh Hashanah usually begins mid-September. As it did this past year, sometimes it goes almost into October. This year it's happening right after Labor Day. Yeah, it's going to be happening very quickly. My sermons will be written hopefully by mid-July.
Summer vacation.
Yeah, so much. Well, no, it'll be great. And then our kids can begin religious school relatively early. These are my notes.
Which
What
makes
else?
all the other holidays come early too, which is kind of good.
Hanukkah will be in November.
Yeah, it starts on.
We'll get to that. We'll
Thanksgiving.
get to that. And I actually have dates for you for the coming year.
We didn't even get back to your yet.
So basically the point for that was never know when the holiday's gonna start. You have to buy one of those calendars from the funeral home that give out for calendars every year.
Sisterhood has all the dates in it.
The sisterhood has all the,
Calendar.
but you don't have photos of me for the 12 years of Rabbi Vaisberg, or 12 months of Rabbi Vaisberg. And for the leap month, you get the cantor. Sorry. Okay, but let's actually do some learning. So what else? What else do we think of with Hebrew calendars?
It's based on the cycles of the moon.
Amazing. So actually, you took one of my early points. Is that the reason that it differs is that we base our months. All months start with something called Rosh Chodesh, which is the Rosh, like with Rosh Hashanah. What does Rosh mean? Head, exactly. And so Chodesh is month, so we have the new month. And every new month starts at the new moon, which means you can't see the moon. And Rosh Chodesh is actually a minor holiday on the Jewish calendar. 4 sacred days we'll add to our morning services something called Hallel, which basically includes a bunch of psalms with a bracha at the beginning, a bracha as a blessing, and a bracha at the end, because we tend to like to make sure that everything we do is sanctified. Yes, madame?
When did they first? I like that. When did they first start with the Hebrew calendar? Because it wasn't always.
The Hebrew calendar as such, if it was developed in Babylon, it was after the first exile, which was 586 BCE, so sometimes after that. And
What
just to
about-
clarify, pardon me?
Because the Chinese calendar and the Jewish calendar are both lunar.
Right. Well, the
Okay,
Jewish
so-
calendar isn't actually a lunar calendar. It's close.
Okay.
So it's a system because originally they started by the Torah calendar. The Muslim calendar is a purely lunar calendar. And so what's the problem with the lunar calendar? The Jewish holidays that we'll also talk about are not only ritual, they're not only religious, they're also based in the agricultural cycle. Pesach, we're really beginning the wheat harvest. And by the time, or I can't remember if it's the harvest or planting it, and by Shavuot, 49 days later, we're not only are we receiving Torah from Sinai, we're also offering our first fruits.
What about Sukkot?
Sukkot is being thankful for everything that happened in the harvest before we go back into winter, or into the rainy season. So our holidays are very much based on an agricultural cycle. However, if we were to follow a strictly lunar calendar, the moon has very little to do with our seasons. It handles tides. It does not handle seasons. The solar calendar is what does the seasons. So, which is why sometimes Muslims will get lucky and have Ramadan in the winter, which Ramadan is where they fast for 30 days and you get to eat at night. So in the winter, it's relatively easy because the sun comes up at 8 and is down by 4:30 again. So the fast isn't awful. In the summer, when the sun comes up at 5 in the morning and sets whenever, 9:30 at night, the fast is much worse. So to compensate for that, we made, and developed in Babylonia, we made what's called the Luni solar calendar, which sounds funny. But it's a lunar calendar that compensates for itself, for its shortcomings in the solar calendar, to reach up to 364 point whatever. Does anybody know that figure? There aren't actually 365 days in the year. There's 364 point something. Do you know?
Something like a quarter, I think, which is why the leap year every 4 years.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you. So we accommodate for that, and that's why we have the extra month. It somehow works into that cycle. But our months are not 30 to 31 days with the 128 or 29th day month. Our months are all 28 days. So, any other thoughts on the Hebrew calendar before we get into the nitty-gritty? Okay, so let's start off. Let's start off basic. What is the week in Judaism?
Saturday.
What is Saturday? So what about Saturday?
Well,
Not to put you on the spot.
Shabbat. No, I mean Shabbat.
So every week you have Shabbat.
Right.
And and the Jewish days we talked about last week, because in Bereshit, in creation, Vayi Erev, Vayi Boker, and there was evening and there was morning, we start off at sundown in the evening, which makes perfect sense if you don't have a watch, because if you believe that you need to change your behavior to be sacred at a very specific time, you need to be able to mark that very specific time. Nobody's awake at midnight, and there's no way to tell with absolute precision when the moon is at the right place. Most people couldn't. It's much easier, and we have the guide from the creation story in Genesis. It's much easier to start the day at sundown. So it's very logical. It's a discrete border. Even though, there's dusk and then it goes through, but it was easier to calculate from than midnight. So we start in the evening, and Sunday is Yom Rishon, which in Hebrew is the first day. So if you look at it in Hebrew, we don't actually have these fun names for the days like Monday and Tuesday. They're just numbered. Day 1, day 2, Yom Rishon, first day, Yom Sheni, second day, Yom Shlishi, third day. And then you have the 6 days, and then Friday night you have Shabbat. So that's the week. And in Israel, if you go there, the work week begins on Sunday. Some people will only get Shabbat off, which is changing a little bit now that both spouses are often working because they simply need the time to be able to do their shopping. So a lot of people will get a half day off on Friday. Some people are lucky enough to get a full day off on Friday where they do all their Shabbat preparations. But really the whole week builds up to that. So Thursday night people go out. And then if you haven't been to Israel for Shabbat, if you haven't been to Jerusalem for Shabbat, it really,
Closes down.
the whole city shuts down.
But Saturday night, boy, it comes.
Oh yeah. As soon as people can go out shopping and go out eating, they have a
The
great
street
time.
comes.
Although if you do want to eat out, there are some restaurants that are still open. They're not kosher places, where they do make very good sandwiches. I'll tell you that. So that is the week. You have 4 of those weeks, and now I have these handy dandy booklets. So I'll pass up 4, Carol. And I made just enough copies for today.
You're good.
Sergio, I don't have an extra one for you right now.
We can share.
Do you mind sharing so I can give one to Sergio? Here you go, sir. So, this opening page right here, does not have everything on it. Oh, you know what? I've got 2 more. Sorry, my bad. So the opening page, it has the cycle of months. And so you have, and this was taken from a lovely children's book in our library, if you ever want to look up some information on the holidays. So we see that we have the month of Elul, which happens in late summer. If you look at the circle, the month of Elul is right here. And that's the month before the New Year. And while there are no holidays in Elul, the high holidays tend to, it's one of those personalities. It's a temporal personality that really brings everything around it, and you feel the echoes much later, and leading into it, you feel it. So you really start preparing for the high holidays at the beginning of Elul. And the preparation, we'll talk about it, but it's really soul-searching, and The idea of the high holidays is to get you closer again, to repair your relationships with everyone around you, and to repair your relationships with God. Carol Sue, you look like you have something to say here. Okay.
Think about repentance.
So repentance we'll get to at the end of the year before we get ready for the new year. So, then we have Tishrei, which is the rabbinic tax month. Accountants go nuts in March and April. This is the time for rabbis, because we have in Tishrei, and the numbers there are the dates. Oh, also you'll see on the inner circle, I just noticed, you'll see the months that these roughly correspond with. And again, it's flexible, but they don't swing too much. So you have Rosh Hashanah, which is the new year, and then Yom Kippur. What's Yom Kippur? Day of Atonement, exactly. So that's very serious soul cleansing. But there's a link that we'll get to, that Yom Kippur, the full name is Yom Kippurim. What other holiday do you hear in that? Purim. So Yom Kippur could be of atoning, lechaper. But Yom Kippurim, which the rabbis make a connection to, is that it is a day like Purim, where they are both considered to be the two holiest days of the year. And they're, in some ways, they're opposites. But if you have, and I'll explain this when we get to Purim, if you have opposites on a circle, while they are furthest apart, they also have the clearest view of each other. So you can keep that one in your back pocket.
Excuse me, the dates that are showing here, that's for some other year?
Yes, this is from the year that this book was
Okay.
published that I neglected to mention. So, oh wait, no, sorry, that's a lie. No, those are the dates on the Hebrew calendar. So Rosh Hashanah is the 1st and 2nd of Tishrei.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not September. And Yom Kippur happens on the 10th of Tishrei. Sukkot, which is a 7-day festival, but sometimes it's celebrated for 8 days, and we'll get into that. Sukkot, what's Sukkot? What's a sukkah? It's a hut. And so it's a harvest festival. It's a festival of Thanksgiving. And having just had Thanksgiving, some of you know, because you hear my ranting, some of you don't, Jewish Canadians typically don't, I'm a Canadian, Jewish Canadians typically don't celebrate Thanksgiving. My theory about that, and not all Jews, but a lot of them, it's typically seen as a holiday for white Christians, and everyone else has their own holidays. My theory as to the reason for that is Thanksgiving happens a month earlier, in October, which happens to be right after this big long list of holidays. So either it's redundant because we don't have the whole narrative of the pilgrims back in Canada. So it could be that it's redundant. It also could be that we've just had enough of celebrating and family and big meals, and we've already gained 15 pounds, and it's time for a break. We're thankful, okay. So that's my theory on Canadian Thanksgiving. So you have Sukkot, you have Hoshana Rabbah, which is the last day of Sukkot, which is some more celebrating, and then you have Shmini Atzeret, which is that on the 8th day you really celebrate. And why, the rabbis teach us? Well, one thing, on that day we pray for rain, because, and this again is evidence of it being linked up with Israel. Here, in the Amidah, which we pray in our service, between this day and Passover, on the summer half you pray for dew, and on the winter half you pray for rain and wind. And some people said that was Sandy. We got heard our prayers a little bit too much, because it was right after we made the switch. So why would we make that switch if here we live in a place where really we just want a decent amount of rain all the time?
Because we're praying for rain in Israel.
Exactly.
It's in the desert, and they really, really need it.
Right, yeah, absolutely. And there's no prayer to have no more rain, because it's never a problem that we're blessed with in Israel. It may be that we don't want any flash flooding, but that's a different story. And actually, hello, Wolfermans. Will one of you kindly share the handout? We have the problem of my having not made enough copies. You'll need a handout, so it's a fantastic problem. And so what you'll find is that in the summertime, actually when I was in Jerusalem last, I believe it was a year ago, there were clouds in the sky in the summer, and I was very freaked out because you never see any moisture at all. Maybe dew on the ground, which is what we pray for. But as soon as the winter hits, as soon as Shmini Atzeret hits, shortly thereafter you'll usually get a rainfall. And the year that I lived in Israel, there's a big long rain prayer that you traditionally say, and it literally rained the next morning. And it was amazing. And then especially in Jerusalem, by the time the summer happens, you're ready for no more rain, because while winters there are not colder than they are here, they don't know how to insulate, and it's tremendously damp. And so they don't have dryers because, it's in Israel. You just hang it out to dry, so your clothing never, ever gets dry in the winter. But you should still go to Israel in the winter because it's pretty. Okay, then we have Simchat Torah. Simcha is what? Joy, happiness. So what do we do at Simchat Torah?
From the joy of the children.
Exactly. The Torah has its own calendar for the different readings for every week, and you conclude that cycle at Simchat Torah every year. And so we rejoice, we stop it, and then we start it again because we just couldn't wait. And then we dance and we have a good time. So Simchat Torah is the last of the parties, and then Cheshvan you get to, which is that next month. And the rabbis call it Mar Cheshvan because it's bitter, because it's blank. Even though you see a few other blank ones, but I see Mar as the greatest month ever because it means you can return back to a normal life. It's because personally my favorite holiday is Shabbat, which happens every week. So you just, you get to move to a schedule, you get to move to something where you just figure out how to bring that holiness into your regular life, which can sometimes be more challenging, but when you notice it, it's a huge gift. Are you still following, or am I losing you? Okay, good. So then we get to Kislev, and what's famous in Kislev? Hanukkah. And you remember which date Hanukkah starts, because the 25th is a very famous date from Christmas. So 25th of Kislev, we get Hanukkah. And Hanukkah, which we'll talk about, it celebrates two miracles. And I'll tell you the secret. The rabbis came up with one miracle because they didn't like the other one. So stay tuned. You'll have to come next week to find out what that is. So we have Hanukkah and Tevet, which is the holiday the month nobody ever remembers when you're trying to list all 12 holidays. All 12 months. It's a month that nobody remembers. It gets the last few days of Hanukkah. Then we get to Shvat, and you get the holiday Tu B'Shvat. Does anybody recognize a word in Tu B'Shvat? Leslie, you see something. Shvat, exactly. So, as with the days of the week, sometimes we have very original names for our holidays. Tu B'Shvat. Tu is a tet and a vav, which numerically make the number 15. And as you'll see, Tu B'Shvat happens on the 15th of Shvat. So basically, this is the holiday that is called the 15th of Shvat. Right. It's funny.
This is why Jewish holidays are not as popular as they should be.
Exactly.
Poor marketing.
Also, this is like the holiday that had the revival with Earth Day, because on Tu B'Shvat we celebrate the birthday of the trees. It's when traditionally the almond trees, which are the earliest bloomers in Israel, their blossoms start to show. So we have a lot of fun tree songs, and lately, as part of Tu B'Shvat and Earth Awareness, we've started having a Tu B'Shvat Seder that you really recall the different fruits of the land of Israel, and it's really fun. So if you haven't been to a Tu B'Shvat Seder, it's a good occasion. You also get to have 4 glasses of wine, which we have at the regular Seder. So
and that's when you mix the white and the red.
Exactly. We'll get to that. Class.
Now these are all the major holidays, but there are many minor holidays.
We're gonna get to that. Carol Sue, but I'm very happy that you brought that up. So then we get to Adar, which has the star because sometimes you have Adar Bet, and you have Purim on the 14th, which we'll talk about when we get there. It's a very fun, raucous holiday. A lot of revelry. The story is actually a lot of drinking, a lot of imbibement. The story is actually much more intense than we often allow to it. And I think this year at Emanu-El we're going to have an adult Purim celebration alongside the Children's Carnival. So we're going to go through the full story in addition to other in addition to other celebratory measures. But when there is a leap year, you actually celebrate Purim in Adar Bet and not Adar Aleph. And there's a fast of Esther that's one of the minor days that precedes Purim. And as well, there's a day after Purim called Shushan Purim. Shushan, basically it was a walled city, so they celebrated it a day later. So in cities that are walled, like Jerusalem, you celebrate Purim a day later, and it's called Shushan Purim. And any other, so Girona in Italy, which is a walled city that had a major Jewish population, they do the same thing as well. If we built a wall around Metuchen, we could have 2 Purim celebrations for the Temple Emanu-El community. It would be fun. You just have to build a wall. It's no big deal. Then you may want to flip your paper. Nisan, not to be confused with the car. We have Passover, which is the day infamous for what? Or the week infamous for what? Indigestion. No, Matzah. Matzah, absolutely. It's a festival of freedom. And then Yom HaShoah is not a festival of freedom. Yom HaShoah is what? Shoah in Hebrew is the term we give to the Holocaust. And so it's Holocaust Remembrance Day. Then the pirates...
Quickly followed by
the pirates' favorite month, Iyar. You missed the joke earlier. Yom HaAtzmaut is Israeli Independence Day, which is huge for us. Lag BaOmer, which is, again, that very original thing. The Omer, or the 49 days between Pesach and Shavuot, which are a time of trepidation because ultimately it's counting the wheat harvest and we don't know what's going to... It's either wheat or barley, I don't remember right now. But you're not sure how much you're going to get. And it's also preparing yourself to receive Torah. It's another time of introspection. And Lag BaOmer, Lamed is 30 and Gimel is 3. So it's the 33rd day in the Omer. And it's a big celebration that in Israel is celebrated by giant bonfires and barbecues. It's the best holiday ever. And then Yom Yerushalayim. What's Yom Yerushalayim? That one's a giveaway. Day of Jerusalem. Why might we have a Jerusalem day that differs from Israeli Independence Day? Amy, do you know this? Okay. That's okay.
Well, that's a fairly modern one.
That's your clue. Yom Yerushalayim. Why? Pardon me?
Is that when it was united?
Exactly. It's when in 67 when we took the East Jerusalem and the Old City. Yeah, exactly. Both parts. And that's actually, the Old City is the only original part. We built... settlement is a very loaded term, but originally it wasn't a loaded term. And so we had different, let's call them neighborhood settlements before Israel became a state outside of the city of Jerusalem. And they linked together to become the new city of Jerusalem, which is West Jerusalem. So we have all the modern holidays. Well, actually, Lag BaOmer is not modern. We have a lot of celebrations in Iyar, and then in Sivan we have what? Shavuot. In some Christian denominations it's Pentecost. And what do we celebrate at Shavuot? I have 10 commandments. It's a Mel Brooks reference. Okay, so those are the holidays. And if you look at the back of this handy dandy package that I made you, there are 3 pages of this. So you want to start with the one that says the Jewish Holiday Calendar 2012-2013. If you ever want anything that will tell you Jewish dates, you can even convert dates, go to this website. It's hebcal.com. You'll see it at the bottom. Short for Hebrew Calendar. You can even download calendars into your Blackberries or iPhones or whatever other electronic devices you have. So we have all the holidays listed here with the dates. Oh, sorry, the one that I missed in Av. Sorry, after Shavuot is Tisha B'Av, which once again, original name 9th of Av. What happens on Tisha B'Av?
Oh, very sad.
Everything awful that happened to the Jews before modern times, before the Holocaust.
Destruction of the temple.
Yeah, we say that everything occurred on this day. That's probably not true, but we remember it all together. So the destruction of the first temple, fall of Beitar's, destruction of second temple, the expulsion from Spain, which was a huge, huge calamity. We could have a whole course on the on Spanish Jewry, which would be absolutely fascinating. Perhaps in a few years, if you still have interest. Tisha B'Av is a day of mourning.
Is that why you're not allowed to get married during that time? Is that correct?
Yes, during the time leading up to it.
Because it's such a sad time.
It's a time of mourning for all Jews. And I think something to take from that is if you look at the different holidays, and you can make this decision, or you can figure this out after we've gone through this course, there are different emotions with every holiday. And Tisha B'Av is our emotion of mourning. It's a
Is
Jewish
it also a
collective
fast
mourning.
day?
It is a fast day. And so we will get to that.
Do
Thank
you
you.
see the extremeness about this?
What do you mean?
We're either fasting or we're drinking.
Well, that's what Mar Cheshvan's for. It's for sobering up after the holidays.
Everything is surrounded about food.
But if we,
Happily or don't,
but when we study Maimonides together, Moses Maimonides, who was a very, very famous rabbi, famous scholar, and also, just to show that scholars can hold jobs, he was also the doctor to the chief chief vizier, the one of the head honchos in Fostat, or the place that is now Cairo in Egypt. Maimonides.
Back then it was my son, the doctor.
Maimon's son, the doctor. Maimonides is Moshe ben Maimon. So, you know. Okay, so we have these holidays. And then, if you turn the page, you have the minor holidays.
Oh, the Festa Gedalia.
Exactly.
That's my favorite.
Well, before that, we get to minor holy days. So Tu B'Shvat is a minor day. Purim Katan, which, you know, you don't want to reject the 14th of Adar in Adar 1, so you mark it a little bit. I actually don't know how you celebrate that. Maybe with one shot of schnapps, just to get ready. I don't know, so don't quote me on that. You have Shushan Purim, which is the walled cities. You have Pesach Sheni, which is another Pesach that most of us won't do. You probably won't even hear about it from me.
How do you celebrate that? Or don't?
I don't know. I actually don't know. There's some things that I am.
What is Sheni?
Sheni means second.
So it's the second Pesach?
Yes. Maybe it's being thankful again. This is something. I encourage your homework, if you would like some, is to go and learn about Pesach Sheni and come back and report. Days of the Omer we talked about, and Lag BaOmer we talked about.
What's counting Omer?
So counting Omer is a spiritual endeavor. Because the Omer, were you here when I was talking about the Omer?
It's week or whatever.
So it's the 49 days between the second day. You start counting the second day of
I
Passover.
don't have any. So
Right. So it was traditionally a time of trepidation, of not knowing if you're going to have enough food to last. But it's also 49 days from the point where we suddenly become adult Jews because we are free and can take responsibility of ourselves, to the point where we're going to be taking on for ourselves the responsibility and gift of Torah. So counting of the Omer, you mark the days, and there's actually a Kabbalistic practice of focusing on a different element of, let's call it a different attribute of the divine personality, which is also an attribute of our personality. And every one of those 49 days, you're supposed to look at a different aspect of yourself to really get yourself ready for the holiness of Mount Sinai and to receive Torah. So those are counting the Omer. And it's a mitzvah, it's a blessing to really do that. Because you're making yourself better. You're making yourself holier. You're making yourself ready to receive it. Then you have a bunch of fasts that occur because of different things. One of them, Ta'anit Bechorot, which is the day leading up to Passover. The firstborn sons are supposed to fast because we're thankful that we weren't killed like the firstborn sons in the plague. However, if you're like me and was born by C-section, Firstborn son only counts two people birthed the natural way, because we didn't have full understanding of these things before.
And they don't have a pigeon event either.
Right, and a pidyon haben is something for another class. I don't want to get us too sidetracked. Tanit Esther, again, we were nearly destroyed. Esther fasted. Or the story about Jewish holidays, they tried to kill us, we won, let's eat. The exception is Yom Kippur. God might kill us because we've been bad, so let's not eat. Okay, we're alive, let's eat at the end. So you have different fasts, you have the modern holidays, and then you have different Shabbatot that are known as festive, different Shabbats, because the holy day, the Torah reading is linked to the holiday, and you also have all the...
Whoa. Shabbat of the red heifer.
Yes.
Because again, I don't have a cow, so I need clarification.
The red heifer, come to Torah study that day. The red heifer is
Really
this
good.
bizarre ritual that we do that will hopefully bring about the Messiah. So come to Torah study. Shabbat Parah, March 2nd. You want to be here. Actually, that's our scholar in residence weekend, so you most definitely want to be at Temple Emanu-El March 2nd and March 1st. The camera's running, and we're going to be on YouTube for those who don't know. So,
Shabbat Shechamim, what is that?
that is the Shabbat before Purim. Shabbat Shekalim. So the point of showing you all this is A, to give you a calendar, so you know.
March 11th is Passover, but that's the class on Passover.
Which one are you looking
I'm
at
looking-
right now? Yeah, I tried to make all the classes before the holidays in case, for
Okay,
those
no,
of
I
you who
understand.
aren't Jewish, if you're going to somebody Jewish for the holidays, or those of you who don't practice and you're going somewhere, and for those of you who do, maybe you'll learn something that you'll want to try out. But the important thing to know, the other thing is, when I was a kid, everybody was like, you Jews have holidays every day. You get to miss school for this and this and this, so this time you actually know what's going on. And the other thing is that it's important to note that not all our holy days are holidays. That we have holy days that are celebrations. We have holy days that are days of mourning. We have holy days that are days of fasting.
So
And
they're observed days. not
Exactly.
necessarily celebratory days.
Exactly. They are ritual days that are designed to bring us to a different temporal place, to bring us into a different space of mind, to connect us to our people, to connect us to our history, and to connect us to God. And we have these all throughout the calendar, and it's wonderful. Sometimes it's hard to keep track of it all, but it's absolutely wonderful. So then the question is, how are these celebrated? Those that are festival days, those that are the major holidays. In here, you don't need to look at this now, but basically, I photocopied from a Guide to Jewish Religious Practice that you see this page right here. It's a great book, but just a disclaimer, it's a very traditional Judaism type book, and it's not written by a liberal Jewish author, so you can be more flexible than he tends to be. So, one of the things to note, all major holy days, except for Yom Kippur, where in the Bible, it says one day of festival, one day of Chag. We celebrate for two in the diaspora. Reformed Judaism, in a lot of Reformed Jewish circles, we went back to one. And in Israel, they only do one, but elsewhere they do two. The reasoning behind this is that you don't want to mess up God's calendar. And God is everywhere, but if God has a place on earth, where is it? If we're going to say that. Pardon me? Jerusalem. The Temple Mount in Jerusalem, absolutely. So, the holidays theoretically need to cover the time at the Temple Mount. And so if we're going to calculate what day it's going to start, that calculation needs to happen there. The hour doesn't actually matter, but the day matters. And so how did they have, back in the times of the temple, how would they communicate to the Jews far away? It'll say in this packet, but you don't need to read it. Has anybody ever seen The Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
With Peter Jackson? So how did they do the signal over long distances when they had to signal that, we're all going to war together and we're going to fight off the dark people.
Fires.
Pardon? Fires.
Fires.
Yeah. What was the name? Sauron. No, yeah, Sauron and all the people in Mordor.
But they did blow the shofar too.
Though they certainly had horns, absolutely, but over the really long distances, over mountaintops, at the highest regional points, they will have these giant torches that they can light. And so they would have signals from mountain to mountain to mountain that would be beacons. And so they would find out over great distances. So let's say for the Jews in Babylonia, the Jews in Israel would tell them by all these fires, hey, it's time to start the holiday. And by the time it gets there, it might be the next day. So better to do 2 days. Then
Did they have codes? I mean, they knew because it was near the holiday.
you knew the general time, and there were people who were educated, but they wanted, you need to be absolutely accurate. Then at some point, the Babylonians say, and by the time of the rabbis reading the Talmud, which is sometime between the year 500 and the year 800, they say, wait a second, we've got the Babylonian calendar. Come on, people, we can do our own intercalating. We can figure out our calendar, but they continue to do 2 days. Then we get to Maimonides, who's a very smart guy, and he says, this is stupid. Why are we doing 2 days? It doesn't make sense. However, it connects us with our people. This is what our people have been doing for hundreds of years, so we will do the same thing. Exactly. It's a tradition, and that's why we'll do 2 days of festival. Reformed Jews say, that is stupid. We do some things that our people have given us for so long, but we don't need to do everything. We don't subjugate women anymore. Although our people didn't see the subjugation, but we believe women to be equal. And also doing 1 day in a different way links us up with Israel, because it means we're following the same calendar Israelis are following. Carol Sue, you look confused.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay.
I just always look this way.
So that's why Reformed Judaism made the decision. In my house, we celebrate 7.5 days. I'll celebrate 7.5 days because I sometimes do 7 days, I sometimes do 8. I oscillate. Part of Reformed Judaism, we're reformed and not reformed, which means we're constantly in process, and constantly reevaluating. And my wife does 8 days. My wife, Miriam, is a conservative Jew. And so in our home we'll do 8 days, and sometimes I'll finish up a little bit.
Wait, we're doing 8 days of...
8 days of the holidays. Like when Sukkot, 2 days of festivals, and so Sukkot becomes 8 days rather than 7.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Pesach becomes 8 days rather than 7. Or more correctly, according to chronology, Reform does 7 instead of 8. The other thing to note is with a lot of the festivals, you have Chag, so you have the days that are very much the sacred festival days, like Sukkot, the first day. Sukkot and Pesach, the first day is a holy day, and the last day is a holy day. And so you refrain from certain behaviors that you would do on a different day. And so because of that time thing, we'll do the first 2 days of Pesach as holiday, and we'll do the first 2 days of Sukkot as a holiday, and you'll extend the last day. So we have the 8th day of Sukkot rather than the 7th day is sacred in our calendar, and then we also add on a 9th day, which is Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah at the same time. Simchat Torah, that holiday didn't come from from the Torah, it came from the rabbis, because otherwise it would be the Torah saying, I need a holiday to celebrate myself. The Torah, while many things, is not self-aware as far as we know.
What about Rosh Hashanah?
So Rosh Hashanah will do 2 days. The Torah actually says 2 days.
Oh, it does.
So when the Torah says more than 1 day for a festival, then for the actual festival observance, then we'll do more than 1 day for the actual festival observance. And Yom Kippur, you can't fast for 2 days. So Yom Kippur, it's enough to do 1 day. We thought, you know what, okay. But also just to make sure with the timing of the moon, that we don't mess it up, all the festival dates are measured at 25 hours rather than 24 to make sure that you get it
So,
right.
in other words, the holidays that we celebrate here are 2 days. They all do.
Hi guys.
Exactly.
How are you?
Exactly that. So then what the days between are called Chol HaMoed. So basically the profane days of the festival. So a religious Jew may go to work in the middle days on Sukkot. But you're encouraged. You're not required, but you're encouraged to try to keep those days in the spirit of the holiday. So if you don't need to work on those days, a lot of people do vacations. And for Sukkot, you still have the obligation of going and eating in your Sukkot, sukkah, which we'll get to that when we'll talk about Sukkot when it comes up in our calendar. On our class calendar, not on this calendar, because our class will be finished before we hit Sukkot. So that's Chol HaMoed. So on the festival days, on the days that are noted as Chag, and we have Chag at the 3 pilgrimage festivals, which is where our ancestors would go to the temple, which is Sukkot, Pesach, and Shavuot. And then you observe Chag, and you observe Chag type rituals on Yom Kippur. On those, you observe it like you do Shabbat, of not doing any work. When we talked about the Shabbat laws, the only exception to that is while you can't start a fire, you can cook. So you're not supposed to cook for meals that are after the holiday because you're only supposed to be celebrating the holiday. But a lot of people will keep a Yortzeit candle. The Yortzeit candles last for 24 hours, which is why they're helpful. And that way they can just use it to light a burner on their stove or use it to light another candle.
Really? So you're allowed to use a yardstick candle for something else other than...
The thing about objects like candles and like wine, they're marketed as Yortzeit candles. But really, any candle that'll last 24 hours can be a Yortzeit candle. It's what you do with the candle. In the same way that you can use anything as Shabbat candlesticks or anything as a Shabbat candle holder. I mean, there's something called Chidur Mitzvah. It's a concept where Chidur is beautification, where you're supposed to make doing the mitzvah beautiful, which is why we have gorgeous things for the holidays. But all you're supposed to do is kindle Sabbath lights, and so it's the blessing that turns the mundane into the sacred. That's what Judaism is. It's taking life around us and finding ways to make it sacred. So if you're going into a Jewish home on one of those festival days, you'll know that they may be observing similar things to Shabbat. They'll be going to shul more, perhaps. There'll be festive meals, and it may be that they're not working. It may be that they're not turning off lights. It may be that they're having a family day and going on a picnic. I once got in trouble with work because this was back when I was in high school and pushing boundaries. I told my job that I couldn't come into work because it was the second day of Rosh Hashanah, so I went out to see a movie because that was relaxing for me. And then my mom told my boss that I was out at a movie and I got in trouble.
You're burned.
I don't think going to a movie is a good way necessarily of spending Rosh Hashanah, but life in Judaism is an experiment. It's a progression. So,
You do.
do it, yeah, exactly. Do what you need to do.
I was in the hospital once and I wanted to light my candles, but couldn't do that. So they were nice enough to give me 2 electric candles. So I set them prior and I lit these little candles. Things,
and you can
I
do that.
plugged them in, but I said to myself, how long should I leave them burning like this?
As long as you want.
No. I remembered somewhere along the line that said at least an hour. So
Yeah.
And then after an hour, I got out of my bed and pulled them on.
But you can leave them on for all of Shabbat if you'd like. And actually, what's the reason for not using electricity on Shabbat for really traditional Jews? I use electricity on Shabbat, by the way, although I try not to use it for purposes that are not in the spirit of Shabbat. It's because setting a spark is lighting a fire. So if that is lighting a fire and you're not supposed to do it, you can also go the other way and say, well, lighting an electric candle is okay for lighting the candle. So you'll see a lot of people have their Chanukiot, the Hanukkah menorahs that they screw in the light bulb and then it turns on. Chabad does that if you ever see their enormous candelabra.
Here's the oil.
Not the big metal ones that are 10 feet
in the
tall
supermarket.
that they like to
They
play.
drive around
Yeah.
with.
Exactly. But you can use oil, and there's actually, I was just where I was in the Talmud, there is a discussion about which oils you're permitted to use and which oils you're not. And there are always some great stories, and they say, well, you shouldn't use balsam oil because it's highly, highly flammable, or highly inflammable. Sorry, flammable technically isn't the word I learned recently.
But they would use olive oil.
Olive oil, yes. But balsam oil is very flammable, and they say, how do you know? Well, there was this mother that didn't like her daughter-in-law, so one day she said, oh, go put balsam oil in this tray. Okay, now go light the candles, and then her daughter-in-law caught on fire. There's some very interesting stories in the Talmud. There are also, no, not good, but it does make their point that balsam oil is inflammable. There's always a point. Wow, absolutely. They're great stories. There are also stories of monsters and ghosts and demons and dragons in the Talmud. It's not only a legal compilation. So if you ever want fun reading, you might find it in the Talmud. Okay, so those are the festival days. Fast days. The major fast days, you should never even ask somebody how they're doing, because it's as if they're mourning. And we'll get to mourning customs, but you should never ask a mourning person how they're doing, because it should be obvious. They're not great, and so fast days. So that's something to know when you go to a house of mourning. You can talk to them, you can be present for them, but how are you? Are you feeling any better today? No. So if you're mourning the temple, you feeling any better today? Well, it's still gone. We may not always feel it as close, but we're supposed to connect with that. The minor fast days, you can go to work, and it's a little bit of hardship to keep you in a different mental place. So on one of those fast days, don't offer a Jew food. Basically. Let's see, is there anything else to note? I think that's everything for your basics on the holidays. And on the calendar, we have 2 minutes for questions. Actually, so this was perfect timing. Does anyone have a question? Oh no, Valerie!
Welcome to my world.
I know this was a lot of information, so you can always email me if you have any questions. Yes, Brian?
Rosh Hashanah, being the first of the year, does that come directly from the Torah? It says, this is the month and this is...
It's the head of the year. Sometimes it's said that it's in the 5th month. It's the 5th month, I believe, from after Nisan, or Pesach is the New Year. But sometimes it's seen as the New Year as well. So that's from Torah. Good question. Anyone else? Well, thank you all for coming, and I hope to see you back here soon. Thank you. Oh, it was a lot. We tried to know 50 minutes. Oh, the other thing to note, and Sergio, this is important to note as well. December 10th, that class is canceled and being moved to. You should join us at the JCC on Oak Tree Road, because at 7 p.m. on December 10th there's a community Hanukkah candle lighting. So we'll touch a little bit on Jews and Christmas when we talk about Hanukkah on December 3rd. But just please note, to all our viewers in cyberspace, there will be no class on December 10th, and that class is being absorbed by another. Assimilated, one might say. So,
if anybody wants a calendar, can they pick it up at
if anybody wants a calendar, you should email me. Absolutely, you should email me, or Sergio can print them out for you. Does anybody want this copy of the calendar?
Actually,
Yeah,
we don't have all three, right?
You have them?
I have one. I didn't know. Did you both get one too?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need three of them.
So December 10th.
Oh, why don't you can
we're not
keep them?
out.
Put it on your fridge, put it on your desk.
One's enough.
Yeah, December 10th you should come to the JCC on Oak Tree Road. Au revoir, mes amis.